Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions. Let me welcome some new people in the side chat and one fairly new returning Moon Medi, but also the Holy Spackle, whom I should be having a conversation with in the near future if everything works out and the sun still shines on the channel. What is she calling it? What's Being Mindful, I think it's still called. I don't know. We're going to have to wait on what the name of the show is. I don't know if it's going to be on Root and Branch because it's not really a Root and Branch thing.
You know? All right.
Where Root and Branch is more of an interview of individuals and their interactions, which is an interesting concept. I like it. But let's get this thing beat. She's calling it Be Just Be. Okay, cool. Thank you, Holy Spackle. And let's go ahead and get this thing kicked off. And from what I understand, Big Zebra, you got something going on. Would you tell us about it, please?
Yes, it's extremely trivial and petty. So I'll put the link in the side chat. And what happened is that there's an old rabbi that I kind of like. You'll love his voice if you hear it. And he did a video called "Why Does God Hide?" And this sort of question, well, why doesn't God make himself evident all the time? That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I naturally put a comment in right away.
Sure.
And my comment is, who would win in a hiding contest? God or Bigfoot? Now, someone immediately said Bigfoot. And someone said Neil Memphax told me that I was a fool. And as always, when someone insults me, I pretend to misunderstand them. And I said, how dare you call Bigfoot a fool?
Nice.
And and that in other news, in zebra dating news, I got a lovely letter from an interesting woman on this dating site, and I wrote back to her an interesting and engaging letter, and I said I was surprised because she mentions her religion is important to her, and here she is contacting just another goddamn lousy atheist.
Zebra.
And she wrote back that the atheist thing does bother her, and that she'll get back to me if she sorts it out.
Oh.
And I thought, so why did you write to me in the first place? It means you didn't really read my effing profile where it says I'm an atheist. So,
not only that, but if she's Christian, she's also against interspecial relationships of a physical nature.
That's right.
So why would she write a zebra?
Well, on the one hand, she might find it offensive because I'm not a human being. On the other hand, zebras are hung like army mules. So there's that. Yeah, even better. So
okay, let's stop it right there. That's going to go too far, way too quick. I can see it happening. Okay, all right. So we were tossing around some ideas a little bit before the show there of what we would make this show of, because frankly, guys, we're not like going through a script here. We're not. We are freely speaking and defending our own individual positions as they're challenged by the topic at hand, whatever the topic might be, and we're just trying to stay to spiritually kind of things mostly, and not much else. So, having said that, we were tossing around the idea of death in the Bible, and Zebra, the floor is yours.
Oh well, I'll tell you that I was listening to a video this morning. And I'm sorry I didn't bookmark it. I could find it if we needed to. But it was an apologist explaining how the Israelites running through Canaan and killing everybody isn't quite as bad as it sounds. You know, and you wouldn't want to have a negative impression of that. So, it's all, the will of God and whatnot. and he put on a very happy face. And I thought it was just
Huh.
kind of vulgar. And
Vulgar?
he meant it in a nice way, killing all those people, the genocide. And I sort of wanted to open up the topic and see what Richard and Mac think.
During the operation, is the head dead yet? You know the boys in the newsroom got a running bet. People love it when you're down. They love dirty laundry.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, I got some strong opinions about this.
Mm-hmm.
But before I jump right into that and go to the meat of it, I need to establish some definitions. And I'm sorry for how that is always difficult and uncovered, because who the heck makes definitions for these things off the cuff? Either and or both of you who would please identify one at a time. Steve first. What is an apologetic?
Well, basically a defense of the faith, and implied the existence of God as well, as far as I know.
Okay, is an apologetic exclusively and or limited to an explanation, or does it also involve speculation?
Does it involve speculation? Well, I guess any creative defense would involve some imagination and then therefore speculation as well.
Mm-hmm. And I would even go far as to say a lot of assumptions. And Mac?
I would agree with all of that. I've always thought of apologetics as being sort of a category of arguments that pertains. It doesn't necessarily pertain to religion. You could be like a Marvel Comics apologist, or something like that. But it often refers to religious arguments. But they're often emotional and certainly speculative.
Okay, and would Steve, would you give an off-the-cuff definition of what an explanation is?
An explanation, geez, it seems so basic that hard to define. But an explanation is a satisfactory answer to a question of circumstances or behavior.
Does it have to include the creativity that we normally see in apologetics?
It might, if you are trying to describe someone else's behavior, you have to imagine and put yourself in someone else's shoes. So please explain why Winston Churchill ordered French ships to be blown up in the Mediterranean. Mm-hmm. You have to put yourself in his situation, right, and to see if ships under the Vichy government were really under risk of being occupied by Nazis, and then
unless of course he'd written his memoirs and wrote you exactly why he did it.
Yes, and maybe he did. I haven't read his.
It doesn't really matter to the example. But certainly, if Churchill had explained why he'd done that, you'd take his word for it, or maybe have to read between the lines and say, well, he said this, but it really means that, or something like that. That could get confusing unless you took it literally what he wrote. Mac?
About Winston Churchill?
No, about an explanation versus an apologetic.
Oh, an explanation. That's an apologetic is a type of explanation, I guess. An explanation is a solid explanation is a description of the reason behind something. It's the end result of an inquiry, of a valid inquiry.
Yes, you could explain something in the Bible, perhaps, that it does not serve as an apologetic.
That's right. Right. Certainly.
Sure.
Absolutely. Oh, if I can, just to interrupt, I'm putting the link to the video I watched. It's with the author of "Is God a Moral Monster?" And his answer to the question is no. And I think the answer is yes. Here we
Who
go.
was that? Was that
His name is
Terrell?
Paul Copan.
Paul Copan. Yeah.
And
Right.
the YouTube channel is James is Tired.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, I put it into the chat there if anyone wants
Appreciate
to look at it later.
I'm
thanks.
sure it's absolutely horrible and non-biblical. And that's without cracking open the cover. Because oftentimes people are talking about something that is written figuratively, but they're taking it literally, but without translating it back to the literal first. And that's the kickoff to the rest of this. I would like to share a screen with you guys. So I don't know that you named it exactly what you'd said before the show, Steve, if you would.
Oh, you mean it is now go and smite Amalek, which means the city, I think, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass.
Right. And that would be
15:3.
Right. Let me get to 15:3 there. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I click on 15:3 on Blue Letter Bible, it brings up the original words. Okay. And these ideas on the left-hand side, these are expressed in the King James. All right. And what you'll see, not every time, but sometimes, is there are words over here and no Hebrew word at all. And sometimes you'll see the opposite. Sometimes you'll see the opposite, that there's a word over here, up here, or in the center, expressed in the Hebrew, and there's no English word over here. Okay. Now I want to note something about these two words right here of, I'm going to say this incorrectly, sor. Sor here, if you look at the lower one, it's most of the upper one. All right? You can see that those are actually the same word, whether you can read it or not, but it's preceded by another deeper idea right there in the first letter. Okay? But sometimes it's not the same word at all. You can see that again, that this is the same as most of this word. It's preceded by the same. I can hear sirens rather loudly.
Sorry.
If I was to hear them louder, would me, please.
I got it.
They don't like your translation.
I guess they don't. And sometimes they're precisely the same. Okay, but that word is not repeating. What this upper listing right here is a textual variant. All right? That's what that means. And I think really the translators did a pretty good job of trying to get to the central idea of it. However, sometimes, let me find one, there's so much that is missing from the lower one that appears in the King James that is in the upper one, and it's completely left out. It's like there's an entire idea right there that is not expressed down here, and you can see the words are different.
What does it say there that is not expressed?
Well, the word here for the King James, it says them not but slay in the King James. But actually, I promise you, the only word over here is slay. Not them, not but, and only slay is there. Mut means slay, or can be like literal kill, murder, death thing. Okay? So that's what you're actually referring to as the word slay right here. Hebrew 4191, bringing that up, it means to die, kill, or have one executed. All right. I'm not going to read all of them. You can read them if you like. And you can see here that this does not have anywhere in it an indicator that it is being used figuratively or literally, and people normally take it to be literal, right? Until you get down here into the actual research. Okay, and this is some of the ways that it's being used throughout the text. All right. Muth, to die, literally or figuratively, causatively, to kill, at all, crying. Wait. How do you cry while you're dead? Okay. Is one of the usages. To be worthy of death, as in not killed yet, destroyed or destroyer. And all of this, a necromancer, a worshiper of death, it can be used that way. And suddenly and in no wise. Okay, so it absolutely can be used by definition, figuratively or literally. We see that, yes?
Okay.
Okay. So that's the actual word. That was the main word in the one that you brought up, and you will find that word appears 117 times in the King James Version. Peace and respect, the African humanist, and it's in 113 verses in the Bible, in the King James Version of the Bible. Okay, so what would we say about it? Should I have an apologetic where I justify the acts of the Israelites instructed by God to go and kill the Amalekites and the king Amalek? Should I even try to explain that and say, oh, well, you should see what they did 500 years ago? No, I'm not going to do that. Should I say that God was justified and there were these ulterior situations that aren't described in the text which justify his acts? No, I'm not going to do that. I think that is an apologetic. Okay. But instead, I'm going to refer only to the text itself and see what the text has to say about the word slay, which can mean to kill. But in the definition, sometimes the variants of the word slay can include to clap, also to entertain, also to mentally challenge. If you look into them, I only did one definition there from one particular part of the text, but if you do an overall survey, you'll find these things I'm saying are accurate.
Just out of curiosity, do they use the word slay for other obvious things, like when animal sacrifice is discussed in the Bible? I don't know. Sorry, Richard, did I talk over you?
Not at all. It's a free-form discussion. I don't think this is... I can't offhand, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, think of a singular time where it says slay, like we're pointing out here about the Amalekites, referring to a sacrificial animal. Although I can think of several times it refers to animals, but not in sacrifice. Right
on. Sorry, I think I interrupted your train of thought. I think, please go ahead.
No, you didn't. I'm absolutely fine. Thank you. Okay, so the greater question here, since we can have words used both figuratively or literally, is not what word is used, but what is the intent of the usage of the word. That is to say, context. What did they mean by slay? Okay. So what you'll find is 100% of the times, if you slay a person, you are instructed to use one of two items. Either one of you guys know the two items that you're instructed to use?
When you slay a human or an animal?
When you slay a human being, mother, infant, pregnant woman, adult male, adolescent male and female, and you slay them, you're to use two tools only, always, and those two tools are what?
Would it be a sort of sickle-shaped thing designed to cut the throat?
No, you can never use that.
Oh, okay. Well, then I don't know.
A stone.
It's always a stone, and one more thing.
I'm not sure.
A sword.
A sword.
Okay. Now, the Bible defines the two words sword and stone, and there's only two places in the whole Bible that it cannot be figurative. And that's when, one of them is when Peter is talking about the crowd getting ready to kill him. and him escaping the scene.
Mm.
And in that case, that word stone right there, as in stone him to death, that word death there is literal, and the word stone there is literal, and it can't be otherwise. However, every other time that stone is used, along with the word sword, and you can ask any Christian about this, they already know the answer to this. If I said, I went to my sword and looked up the words mooch, what would they think I said? That I had gotten something out of a scabbard and found a definition? No, they'd think I went to the website My Sword and looked up that word from the Bible, because that word is on My Sword, which is a website. But it's no accident that the Christian website called My Sword is called My Sword, because the word sword there means what?
Word.
It means the word
book
of God, or the truth. It's supposing it's the truth.
That's right.
It claims to be the truth.
Right.
So when the Bible directly says the word of God is like a two-edged sword, cutting in both directions, separating sinew and bone, or when it says him who is like unto the Son of God had a two-edged sword coming out of his mouth, etc., 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 it's talking about telling the truth.
So, but they didn't. Well, what under that interpretation, what would have happened? Would the Israelites have gone to the Amalekites and preached to them the Hebrew Bible?
I appreciate that you're smart and you're jumping ahead. Now, the word stone is also described definitionally in the Bible. Here's a description of a stone. It is something that doesn't change, and you must not try to change it. It has the word of God written within it, and you cannot lift a tool upon it. That's a stone.
All right.
But if I said casually to someone, I know of a place where, or I know of a thing where, the word of God is written in it, no hand has been lifted upon it, it is unchanging, it is still absolutely the word of God, I'm talking about what?
The Bible.
Exactly. The word stone means Bible.
How do we know, though, that that interpretation is correct, whereas
it's definitionally correct? I just gave, if you want, I can look it up and show it to you.
Well, the word slay does mean kill, though, much of the time. Like in that breakdown you showed us, slay, almost all the definitions involve killing.
Okay, so if I say big zebra is a stool.
I don't know what that means.
Well, okay, I'll say big zebra is a tool. I'll say something we do know. Okay. Does that mean you're a screwdriver?
Well, no.
Perhaps a hammer. Perhaps a literal penis.
Could be.
No, you are not a penis. Penises don't speak, first of all.
Damn.
We won't bicker over whether or not zebras do, but just the same, you can't be just a member, a tool. You can't be. So I obviously meant it contextually. You will understand that I meant that colloquially or figuratively, and I can't have meant it otherwise. And how do you know that? Because we have a standard definition for that phrase identifying what tool means. That's how you know that. So if a definition exists and you don't use it, which for humor you might say something like, how dare you call Bigfoot a name? I don't remember what the name was. You are purposefully twisting it to your liking, okay, when you don't accept what was actually said. Is that fair?
Yes, but I'm still not convinced that you're right about, like, it's not like you have to convince me, but I don't see how you can be right about this phrase and this wording, because what is the purpose of, if you are correct, What is the
Yes.
purpose of this bit of the Bible? What does it tell us?
Okay. Well, I'd like to point out that Christians believe Christ was righteous and true and correct. And Christ says, I agree with, and in fact, I fulfill all of the Old Testament.
Hmm.
So if he agrees with and fulfills the Old Testament and the Christian is right about him fulfilling the Old Testament and they're right about how to read the Old Testament, I stay the hell away from Christ. I'd keep him at 50 feet. Because what if he thinks I'm a homosexual? He has to murder me. If that's what the text means. So they could have either gentle Jesus or violent Old Testament, but you can't have both.
Mm.
And the only way that it's consistent throughout is if you use the definitions given for these objects. That sword means truth of God, and that stone means the Bible itself. By the way, if you read any of those passages and you apply it that way, it makes perfect sense and is nonviolent.
But what about all these Canaanites living in land that the Israelites want? We haven't addressed that.
You know they're a godless people, right?
Well, I had a funny moment when I looked up this business of the Amalekites, and it turns out that in the additional text called the Midrash, Jews believed that the Amalekites might have been shapeshifters that turned into animals. And my thinking was they had to kill them all. That's why they had to kill all the animals, because they might have been Amalekites hiding as animals.
That's crazy.
Let's get really, really fundamental and talk about what this book is talking about. It's obviously not about the history of this planet. There's no evidence. In fact, although it uses some real people and real places and real objects, it's obvious that it's making up more than what is factual. That's just the way it is. And although it does use some real things, it mostly uses unreal things. For instance, the Canaanites get completely killed off and show up later. Well, you can't have both. Goliath definitionally gets killed twice. What did he get resurrected? There's no story about the resurrection of Goliath. Yet he shows up in 1 Samuel and again in 2 Samuel to be killed and is killed. Okay, so either they don't mean a literal being there and they're talking about a lesson, a storyline, using the same character more than once, which is fine. But they can't be talking about literal history of literal human beings all the time. They just can't be. Okay? So
what about editorial error? I mean, because you have different people writing these books.
To the editorial area, I'm going to say one thing at a time, Steve. Geez, man. if you keep bouncing between topics, I'll never catch up with you. I won't be able to.
I understand. Okay? Please keep going.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate brilliant people, and I think you are. But just the same, you go to the next thought, the next thought, the next thought, and there's no way to really talk about it. So if I refuse a definition given by the writer of the letter, then I'm dishonest. That's all there is to it. Since those definitions are given, I have to apply them wherever they can be applied. There's some places they can't be applied, like in the case of Peter getting hit in the head with rocks. So he left. It can't be applied there. It doesn't work. But everywhere else it does, in which case these are nonviolent acts. Now, since what we're talking about here fits very neatly into the second half of End Times and not at all into the history of the planet, and since the job of Jesus Christ is described as the two witnesses in the second half of End Times, then I'm willing to accept it's talking about the second half of End Times consistently, except for the first 6 days of creation. Now, if that's true, and it's not history, but it is prophetic and strictly prophetic, then what we've got here is end times testimony. This easily explains why they never run across a believer who agrees with them. This explains why people brought back from the dead don't come back to Jesus when he visits the town later and says, yo, bro, thanks for bringing me back. I've had 2 kids since then. That was awesome.
Right.
He never gets the fist bump ever. because they can't come back. That's because they ascended. Once you ascend, you don't come back to the planet. He can't see you again. And this is consistent throughout the text. Okay? So we're talking about a time of testimony where there's very few people in the area. The area is basically destroyed. People are having a lot of trouble surviving. There's general plagues and a lack of food, starvation, and all of these things going on about amongst 100% non-believers in God. How convenient. Well, I mean, the word had been getting around for a year. There were believers. People said they became believers. How come you never see them again? You don't, because you can't. They left. They're not on the planet. Okay, so yes, it sounds funny, and yes, it's exaggerated and overstated in order to make emphasis of something that is highly important, that this small group, not all Christians, go and testify to this non-believing group, because God's about to destroy the planet, and they need to accept the truth. You better go do it now. This is it. This is the last chance.
When you say end times, when is this supposed to be occurring then? Because I'm not an
angels or the Christ will know, but there are signs to identify when it starts.
Oh, okay. All right.
But only the Father would know it, and I'm not the Father, so I can't answer that. Sorry, bro.
Me neither.
Okay, fair enough.
Lordy. So, is there anything about the construction of these passages that would suggest they're supposed to happen at a later time than as opposed to history?
Sure. How about this? The Bible says that if a prophet is wrong about the prophecy, they're not a prophet. Is that fair?
Okay. Sure.
That makes sense, right? Jesus says this generation will not pass before they have seen all of these things come to fruition, every jot, every tittle.
All right.
So what's your assessment of that?
Well, I think it would be plainly wrong that it was written by followers of Jesus who were enthusiastically predicting his return.
You're changing it. You're changing it. That's not the question. The question is, within an internal critique, if the Bible says you can't be wrong about the prophecy and be a prophet, and then the Bible quotes Jesus as having said, all this is going to happen, you're not even going to die before it happens. What do you logically come to with just that?
That it did happen? I can't follow it because it seems illogical.
Right.
To me.
If we're on the earth talking about it, then every jot and tittle has not been completed. Are we on the earth talking about it?
Sure. Here we are.
Okay, so a Christian has two choices. A, Christ is not the Messiah. He is not the prophet. Or B, they've got the time frame wrong. That's all.
Well, he did say, what about this bit about this generation shall not pass until these things... So is it that this generation will not ascend to heaven until these things happen? Is that what that means?
No, because it means they won't die of natural or unnatural causes until these things have all been completed. And it says generation, not a specific person. So it means people alive in that moment will not die of old age, all of them, before these things are complete.
But were they ever made complete?
That's my point. They weren't. Or else you and I wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm. So Jesus is not who we think he is.
That's a possibility, yes. What if he's right, though? What if he told the truth?
Well, then the people who died have not really died since then, because the generation didn't pass.
Nope, that doesn't work because we know that those people are not still around. Maybe
they are around and we just don't know. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's
But
interesting extrapolation, but the Bible says when you're dead, you're dead.
Well, what do you make of all this, Richard?
The only way it's not, the only way that Jesus can be the prophet, excuse me, and said all of the prophecy will be fulfilled before that generation passes, is if all of the prophecy is fulfilled while that generation is alive, and Jesus says it at such a time that they would be, which means he says it during end times.
Right. So he
comes. Possible.
What about Mac? He's been awfully silent.
I'm taking it all in. I'm thinking about whether or not I should clarify, because I think I see where the difficulty is for the two of you to connect. Is basically Richard's arguing from the point that the value of the Bible is in its internal consistency. When and if that falls apart, it becomes basically as valuable as atheists consider it, which is valuable as a story and a historical artifact. But if it has internal consistency, then it becomes something really, really amazing and important. And for Steve, I think it's not a problem that Jesus was just either incorrect or insincere when he said that to the disciples about they wouldn't die before all these things came to pass. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but that's probably not a problem for you.
No, it isn't. I don't mind that somebody got something wrong in the Bible. That's okay with me.
That's a really
it's a big problem, Mac. For me.
I think the difference there is whether or not we're talking about our personal opinions or if we're talking about an internal critique. Right. I don't give a crap about. My personal opinion has little to do with anything. But the question is the Bible consistent within itself? Well, to the Christians, obviously, it's self-contradictory repeatedly. I mean, over and over and over again. However, it's not contradicting within itself in a continuous contextual frame. It's just they've got the time frame wrong. That's all.
Is there any hint in the language that, for example, someone is trying to discuss a possible? Pardon me, I don't have the beautiful Latin grammar rules down, where possible future action, or what I am saying now, I meant to stand in the future at some possible time. Is there any hint in the language that something like that is going on?
I might need you to expound on that a little bit.
Well, when people say things, what is it now? I should have put the cake in the oven. So I think that's called the subjunctive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there are all sorts of variations on that in languages. And so when I return to the earth, I will say all has been accomplished. So there's, pardon me, I'm becoming inarticulate here, but they're trying to sort of stretch language in order to take possible futures into account. And just the same way the Book of Revelations does, and it drives people crazy because
no,
what does
the Book
mean?
of Revelation? The Book of Revelation does that in no way. Okay.
No. Okay.
It really. I'm sorry that I'd like to apologize to all humans who've ever heard of Christianity, because it's nowhere in the Bible, except for the extremely basic stuff like Jesus has got this. Take his word for it. That part they totally got that right. But of course he comes and says, look, you guys are wrong about all this stuff and you got to fix it, and here's how you fix it, and here's the way to look at it. That's what Jesus does. If you read if you read all of the New Testament, that's what he's constantly doing. You have heard, but I say. You have heard, but I say. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's correcting people's view on some certain thing. That's what that is. Okay. if definitionally Christ is the one and the only one, and according to Christians, they'll always agree with it until I reveal what I'm talking about. And then they'll sprint backward at about 1,000 miles per hour. Don't even know how they do that. I can't. I can't sprint backwards at maybe but 8 miles an hour. But wow, it's impressive if you watch this. If I say that someone told the truth about God, was killed for it, was dead 3.5 days, was raised from the dead, continued to tell the truth about God for exactly 40 more days, and then ascended into heaven, they have no choice but to say Christ. That is the description of the two witnesses of end times, but it can't be anyone but Christ. Okay?
Okay.
So it makes sense to do it in a time where it would be effective, when the population would be low, when there'd be no believers anywhere around, and just hit the last of the people that stayed behind. That's why all the towns are small. That's why they're drinking from the wells of their fathers. That's why they're foraging for food. That's why there is drought and famine. That because the signs of end times already happened. That's why there's an opening for a new government through the beast of Satan, is because, well, guess what? That would be the fall of government if 80% of people went to heaven. It's a big opening. It's all up in the air. And that's why that is taken advantage of in that moment. But definitionally, and Christians will agree until I say I got all of that description from the book of Revelation, and then they'll freak out and lose their ever-loving minds.
That's hilarious.
I do it on purpose to show them just how inconsistent they're being.
The thing is that if there was some God behind all this,
Sure.
he's got a funny way of writing books. You know, it doesn't seem. How's any like? Let's say Richard is right. Well, that's one of them, and for the rest of us, the Bible is a mess. If you see what I mean.
This is addressed in the Bible in two different ways.
Mhm.
Okay. First of all, he says things like milk and meat of the word. And meat of the word is about the same thing as saying hidden manna. And at the end of the Gospels, Christ says to the apostles, and then it doesn't get written down what he wanted to say, but he says to the apostles, I have meat of the word that I have yet to give you because you weren't ready to eat it, and you are not ready still. And then the story ends. Which means the Christian can't even read everything that Christ wanted to tell the apostles. You see? So how can they have a better understanding than the apostles, who also did not get all of the message? Obviously, they can't.
Right.
Okay, so they've got a partial message. And within the idea of meat of the word and hidden manna, it is qualified as saying, but I am going to reveal these things during end times. It says it like things like, and in those days, young men will dream dreams and old men will have visions. It says things like this a lot. Okay. That these things are going to start being revealed to the general population, to not so special people, so that we can kind of come to understand and start to adjust to the new ideas. The ideas that have been part of divine hiddenness, that have been hidden and locked away on purpose, so that we had free choice and some would say free will. It's been allowed for, and that is moral. In fact, anything else I think would not be moral to do. So it's talked about, it's spelled out, it's justified, it's given a time frame, and all of that is super clear. And Christians won't even argue with me on those points.
The Iron Charioteer in chat asked an interesting question. I was thinking that the destruction of the Second Temple was a sign of the end times.
Does the Bible say that there'll be a second, the destruction of the Bible of the temple a second time? Is that what the Bible says?
I don't recall that, but basically, Iron Charioteer is asking what you think about the destruction of the Second Temple in AD 70? And does it align with how you interpret things?
I think a building got torn down. That's what I think happened. I think it happened once before, which is why they called it the second time.
Yes. That's an example of extreme gentrification.
Well, to answer directly, the Bible is not talking about. It's just like the prophecy of Tyre. Let's take something that absolutely did not happen and look at that.
Mm-hmm.
The prophecy of Tyre, where Nebuchadnezzar is supposed to overtake it, and it's supposed to become like smooth as a rock, and no one will ever live there. Guess what? Folks live there.
Mm.
Right.
And it wasn't Nebuchadnezzar who did it in the past of this planet. It was Anthony something or Mark something. Anyway, one of those actual heroes is the one that overtook Tyre. And it was years later, and he had a huge multiple army thing to do it with. And they rebuilt it, dude. It's not smooth forever. But that's what the Bible says will happen. Okay, let's flash forward. The oceans are removed from the planet, and there was no more sea, and no island could be found, and the mountains melt like wax. What do you think your chances, your percentage of chance, would you put on Tyre's survival of that? I'll put a 0 on it. There is absolutely no chance that any people will be living on this planet and that it'll be one big smooth rock when it finally cools down. If it finally cools down. Now, those are direct Bible verses. There will be no more sea. No island was found, and the mountains melt like wax. And the smoke of the seat of the beast rose up forever and ever. Forever and ever there means a really long time that you can't understand.
Mm.
A long, long, long freaking time. It doesn't mean eternity. Okay? So would that be true if someone able to removed the oceans? I'm betting on yeah.
Jeez.
Because the oceans provide pressure downward on the plates.
Mm-hmm.
There's ocean currents of salinity and temperature, transferring heat all over this planet, keeping the crust pretty much the same temperature everywhere. And without that system of evaporation and cooling, temperature transfer, salinization and desalinization, atmospheric moisture and rain, guess what? You'd be standing in a lake of fire right now. So will Tyre be, after the event described, rubbed smooth like a bald man's head after he pushed on a rock too much? Well, yeah, I'm thinking it will be. I think that's totally accurate. Will Sodom and Gomorrah be burnt down completely and there'll be nothing left? Yeah. Will Lot's wife be turned to ash? She stays behind. I promise you she'll be ash. You ever heard of somebody standing in a lava flow? Would it be true that death and hell will be cast into the lake of fire? Well, yeah, it would, because you got this big lake of fire and Satan and his crew is stuck here along with the fallen angels. Yeah, sure, no problem.
See, it resolves a lot of things. Steve, that's the thing. It resolves a lot of those conflicts to consider the Bible in this way as mostly being prophecy, or if it's history, it's because it's happened before, but not here.
The tale says that it happened before, but obviously not here because they'd had all of end times. In Revelation 7:9-15 describes where angels came from, that they went through end times and accepted Christ, and that's why they live with God, which we can say means they came from an earth, because that's the kind of animal that does that, is a human being. And we know it didn't happen here. Did it happen in the past? Yes, not here. Now, if you expect evidence of Christ's existence and prophecy on another planet to be found here, I'm going to say there's something wrong with your logic.
Of course, you have to be persuaded that this other place exists and that this interpretation is correct.
Can we go with just plausible for now?
Sure.
Is it plausible for there to be somewhere in the cosmos, well, however big that is, for there to be another Earth-like planet where we could survive? Is that possible?
Sure, very easily.
Is it possible for there to have been a barren, not Earth-like planet that's just in the M-class zone from the right kind of star, at the right distance, at the right temperature, orbiting at the right speed with the right other planets around it and a good-sized moon? Is that even more likely than another Earth?
Yes.
Is it likely that there is intelligence out there somewhere that in order to cross a galaxy and come to us to introduce themselves would have such technology that they would be able to terraform a barren planet in the way described in the beginning of the Bible?
Yes, if you can manage to travel across an entire galaxy,
Exactly.
it's hard to overcoming the technical problems involved. To even go a fraction of light speed, say 20% of it, and arrive intact, that's
Sure.
nothing short of amazing.
That is amazing. That would be absolutely freakish. Okay, so the claim in the story is angels never lived here on this planet, but they intend to arrive en masse, bringing with them steerable storage devices where they have plants and animals that they did not create but borrowed. And they go around terraforming planets that they find that can be terraformed, that they did not create. They alter them. And then they put a batch of genetically modified children on it, and the children are a little bit lower than themselves. That's the actual claim.
So some sort of panspermia thing is going on.
Well, intelligently directed panspermia, but panspermia.
Mm. I find it really interesting. I don't know if I can swallow it because I'm not the sort of person to. It probably makes more sense than having some weird jealous god going around and smiting people. So
Yeah,
it's more a pleasant prospect than that.
Well, I think that there's a lot of presupposition from tradition going into the Abrahamic religions, and they're reading it within that context. And the Bible not only argues with that context, it demands it's wrong. Jesus agreeing with the Old Testament, for instance.
Mm.
And that's universal. You could go to the word flood and deluge during the time of Noah's Ark. And even in the New Testament, they say, and in those days will be as the days of Noah's Ark. But I'm not going to use water to destroy ever again. What?
All
I mean, did you catch that? You can't have both if it means literal water.
Maybe he'll go for lava next time.
He is going for lava the only time. Because it gives a definition for what it means by waters. A large group of beings of every nation, tongue. How's it exactly go? Nations, multitude, peoples, tongues. I think that's how it goes. So it means a whole bunch of diverse folks. That's what waters means. I mean, is Jesus gargling when he speaks it with the voice of many waters? Is that it? They're talking about him gargling something? That makes no sense. Does it make sense that in a lake there's a tumult on the waters? You can get some amount of waves on a lake or something, but you're not going to get anything real big and scary unless it's a really big lake.
Right.
You're going to get 1 foot to 2 foot waves at the most on some high winds.
Well,
maybe
a lot
it's
of
not talking about H2O at all.
the thing is that if you, for example, if you were a Hebrew writing something 3,500 years ago, how would you write a story about an ark that floated on the water that had all these animals? You might not be able to, if you were reading this story and translating it with the tools we have now online. You might have no other option but to come to your conclusions. But it wouldn't be possible for someone to write the story they wanted to write under those circumstances. Because everything would be interpreted symbolically. Water can never mean water now, if you see what I mean.
Oh, no, it's very clear, I think, in context when it's talking about H2O. It says, it mentions the thing that holds the water, like a well or a cup or a bucket. It mentions something. Whereas you couldn't fit a singular human being, never mind a large group of human beings, into a well or bucket or cup. And it talks about using it to water camels. But you'll never find where it says waters camels. You'll never find that, not one time.
Sorry, you'll never find what when camels are watered?
You'll never find the word water, plural, talking about giving it to animals.
Oh.
You'll find water, which is already plural. You'll never find it, I'll say, overly pluralized. Waters. You'll never find that. That's not there. Because you can't water a camel with human beings. Doesn't work.
But we know that in the story of the Ark, that one of the reasons in the traditional sense of the story is that the waters of the deep rose up and swamped land.
Is that what it says, actually?
Yeah, I think it's called this spirits of the deep, waters of the deep.
Actually, no. You're confusing two parts, and Christians do this to you, and I apologize. It's not your fault. Christians assume face of the deep means waters. The Bible does not say that at all. It's two different topics. It doesn't mix them together ever.
So what does it mean, spirits of the deep?
It never says spirits of the deep. That's not a thing in the Bible anywhere.
Oh, okay.
It says darkness was upon the face of the deep. Of course, if you don't have an atmosphere to refract light in different directions, any planet you stand on, darkness is on the face of the deep. Because that's what space looks like, even if you're standing in the sunshine. You don't see a blue sky without an atmosphere. It can't exist. And in the transformation of the planet, they go through it step by step, which is exactly what we see in the fossil record in the stuck on a word stratigraphy of the planet. We see that first there was air, then there was water, then there were simple plants, then there were complex plants, then there were simple animals, then there were complex animals. This is exactly what the Bible says. I'd like to know how the hell those ancient people knew that. I don't think they could have. They certainly didn't have the University of Utah, UC Berkeley, Darwinism. They didn't have Darwin. No way.
I think when I said spirits of the deep, I had it wrong. Maybe the translation also is bad. Genesis 8:2 talks about the fountains of the deep.
Right, the
Right.
fountains of the deep.
Yeah.
You know
But
that word fountain right there, if you don't mind, I'll tell you what the word fountain right there is, and it's the key to understanding all of it.
hmm
First of all, there's no necessity for water to come out of a fountain in
okay.
the definition of the word fountain itself. Now, you would think, to an English thinking mind, it would be. Okay? What a fountain is an eyeball shaped thing, an eye, like with eyelids, shaped thing in the face of a landscape. Now, if waters means human beings, I think most likely most people, adults, male and female, can think of something where waters burst forth out of an eye-shaped thing in the landscape.
I didn't get
Well,
this one the first time.
well, would that would a spring do? Because we know water does emerge forth from springs,
It's
and
not talking about a water spring. There was a word for that. They use fountain quite on purpose right there.
mhm.
It's a vagina, bro. It's talking about
Eye-shaped
natural
water.
childbirth. Now, if you want to argue with me that this population did not get this way through fountains of the deep bursting forth waters,
hmm
you and I are going to have a problem. So I don't know how else to explain how we all got here.
So this is a sort of a creation myth where the earth is the great goddess woman who brings forth the multitudes.
There's a reason for that to exist. Yes, that's part of it.
Okay.
Also, the name Shiva, translated as Eve, means the mother of all. Okay, it's talking about the goddess literally giving birth to mankind. The first woman who is with and of the first man, male, the first Homo sapien couple ever, birthed all of mankind, because that's how it would go.
Right.
That's how all of us get here, is mom and dad gave birth to me. It's pretty unanimous, actually. So
Yeah.
So
Sorry, Iron
definitionally,
Charioteer just said something hilarious. So thank you, Iron Charioteer.
say no more, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yes.
Say no more. Yeah. No, that's exactly what they're doing, is they're saying say no more, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's exactly what they're doing. They're not coming out and being vulgar. I think it's kind of sweet, actually, to romanticize human anatomy in such a way, like it does repeatedly. And her breasts were like roebucks of the high hills, etc., in the poetry of Solomon. I don't really have a problem with that. And I'll give you for instance, in the Hebrew, how much that is done. The word walk is not walk in the Hebrew. It does mean to walk. Those are the right words in English. That's fine. The word walk, what word turned out walk in the English, actually means to stretch the pudenda. Now, if you walk, you will stretch your pudenda. You have no choice about it. And that's the kind of words that the ancient Hebrews used. The Middle Hebrew used. They didn't say walk. They talked about things that would imply it and necessitate a certain action. For instance, the word face does not mean this part of my body. It doesn't. What came out in English as face is actually to turn. That is the part that turns you. Became in the English the word face. It's the part that turns you and leads you. So like when God says, I have seen your face, what it really should read in the English is, I understand how to turn you. The whole idea there is wrong. It's not, I have seen your face. It's, I understand, seen, understand, comprehend, considered, regarded. That's the definition of saw or seen right there. And face meaning that which turns you. I understand how to turn you is a much better translation than God saw your face. For instance. So they speak about how things work. They don't label objects with ultimately names with no meaning. Like we do that all the time. They didn't have an arbitrary language like that. It described the thing.
It's interesting.
I thing is that you're a brave man, Richard, because I don't know how someone could, like, I can accept it as an interesting idea, but
Sure.
I don't know how someone could ever prove it to me that this translation was right.
Do
And if
you
I
hear what you hear what you just said, Steve?
yeah, how could I know for sure that you were right? I'm not sure.
You know why I'm laughing, right?
Because you just showed me you were right. I don't know.
No. It's designed to where it can't be proven.
Okay.
You know how smart that is? You know what it took to design it to where it can't be proven? You know what it took to leave you free choice?
Well, if that's the case, why do we even read this damn book at all?
I tell people do not read it. I tell people all the time, it's a book about the hero for the hero. It's not for you. Stop assuming the promises are to you. Stop assuming the demands are to you. You know you can't do it, and you know you're not getting that stuff. Stop reading the Bible. Stop it.
You know, the Catholic Church used to hold the same opinion.
I agree, but their preachers shouldn't be reading it either. Their pope shouldn't be reading it either. I mean, it makes no logical sense for me to make a set of instructions, promises, things to avoid, things to engage in, how to engage in them if you're going to do them, how to do them well, to someone who can't do it. That's dumb. That's dumb. It's severely dumb to do that.
Actually, come to think of it, Richard, there are supposed to be 613 rules in the Old Testament that Jews are supposed to follow. I wonder what each of those. No? Okay, well,
it never says that the people are supposed to follow this. It doesn't say that one time.
Well, what about wearing corners on your cloths and only having one fabric? You know what I mean? Like, what do these things actually mean?
They didn't have clothing of mixed fabric back then.
They what? Oh, they didn't.
They didn't have clothes of mixed fabric back then. That is not true. What do you think people were weaving together silk with cotton back then?
Well,
no,
first,
if you had silk, you had silk. If you had cotton, you had cotton.
Okay, but what do you take of all the 613 rules that modern Jews adhere to? Not modern Orthodox Jews.
Yeah.
How would you regard these things as sourced in the Bible? Are they misinterpreting them?
No, they're not understanding the intent. Turn your love around. Time the girl became a woman. Love that song. Okay. To the one that you mentioned. Now, I've said before, and I'll probably have to restate it several times to keep the context in the forefront of someone's mind, because people have been Christianated. And I apologize. There's nothing I can do about it. Society happened. You lived in that society. I deeply apologize. Let's go ahead and fix that. Okay. There has been no Sabbath, or God has rested. God never rested. There's been no Sabbath. Simple as that. The beginning of the Sabbath day is our elevation into heaven. Thereby, right now, because we're sitting here talking about it, we are in the 6th day. The end of the 6th day is the book of Revelation, the end times. That's why it's called the end times, and God can't be resting until we're perfected. Okay, so we're at maybe close to the end of the 6th day, sort of, maybe. All right, so let's put that in frame. Now, if you had an army, 144,000 of them, easily divisible by 12, wink, wink, that and they were going to follow the Lamb, and the apostles following the Lamb wherever they should go. They're a protectionary force and or the army of God. Well, okay, armies have commanders. You want certain kind of people doing certain kind of things. You want your army to do certain things. Hey, I know what. Let's write a list of rules for the army. Don't touch dead stuff. That makes sense. Don't wear a uniform I didn't give you. That makes sense. In fact, all of the rules, all 613 laws in that context to that situation make perfect sense. All of them. And guess what? Since they're being fed and taken care of and they're a protectionary force like an army, they can actually sit on their butts while God cooks their food. And sends them manna down from heaven, which might be care packages on parachutes. I don't know.
George Bush did that. I hope that doesn't make him God.
No, it doesn't, because it wasn't manna.
Okay. Oh, there's Mac. What happened
so
to
saying don't wear clothes of mixed fabric is a lot like saying don't change the single cloth, single thread uniform I gave you. Do not put on modern clothes, which are almost all of mixed fabric. Myself, right now, I'm wearing a cotton poly blend T-shirt. And
well, you're even.
I am. I'm not following the rules, but guess what? I'm not in the army.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing, I think, a cotton with spandex with tear stop. Like a cargo pant right now, which is good because it stretches, it doesn't bind on you, and it's hard
actually,
to
just to be annoying, this business about having clothing of a single type, not blended. But suppose you were wearing 100% cotton T-shirt, but the tag was silk. Would that count as a mixed fabric?
You can remove the tag. That is mixed fabric. Technically, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I just, wanted to nail this down. But in yeshivas, they argue about all sorts of things. Because in terms of like how to interpret the law, how do you deal with X, Y, Z? And I just wanted to indulge in that because I think it's really interesting.
I'd like to go ahead and justify this for Iron real quick. Just like whatever your dad did and your mom did, you're not to blame for. That's the intent of this.
Well, I thought it was the worshippers of Baal would boil a calf in its mother's milk, and that's why they don't.
If that's tasty, good for them. I don't know. I've never tried it, but where you nursed didn't make you what you are. You are not responsible for the milk of your mother. You shouldn't be boiled in your mother's milk.
Reminds me of the wineskins.
Exactly. And it just says it like 1,000 friggin' times, man.
Right.
If a person can't see that these are parables about how to treat each other, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, the Jews take these as being laws, as like they were supposed to start doing it and doing it forever. You ask them, they can't do it. There is no person who's perfectly adherent to the law. There can't be. You'd be dead. Well, maybe you could have a really, really extensive support group and they just take care of you. Maybe it worked that way.
There was a fellow who wrote a very successful book called The Year of Living Biblically, and he followed all the rules strictly for a year.
Really?
And he wrote a book about it. Yeah.
What do you do? Just like sometimes have no warmth, sometimes have no food, sometimes have.
Well, I didn't read that book because at the time I worked for a different publisher. And
Okay, well, you couldn't get me to do it. I promise you that.
yeah, to me, I wouldn't even think about doing it, even if I thought it would be a bestseller. I might lie and say I did, but that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, if you haven't already left, peace and respect to you. And also peace and respect to God the Good One, who is sort of a friend. We're becoming friends over time, I think.
I like his avatar or logo.
Yeah.
It's a great drawing of God, I think.
That is actually, it's funny because this is a very, very bad childlike drawing of the person themselves wearing a mask that they made themselves, which is also a very bad childlike drawing. It's hilarious.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love it.
Okay.
Gentlemen,
Hey,
I have to shove off, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you both so much.
Peace
Really.
and respect.
Peace and respect to both of you. And we'll be in touch. We'll do it again next week.
I certainly hope so. Thank you, sir.
All right, and thank you for being so patient with us, Richard, because I often don't get it, and I need some time to let it sink in.
No, it's perfectly acceptable and understandable that if you were raised into a Christian-based society, and you didn't have a choice, that you would have certain concepts like hammered into your skull from the time since before you could speak. So if I blame a individual person for the collective that is their community, I think I'm unreasonable.
Yes, well, thanks for that, because I'm going to need all the patience you have to offer. If it's okay, I'm past my ability to keep going, so I'm going to hang up. And
well,
again,
we have gone more than an hour in the first place, so it's fine.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hey, well, looking forward to next week, and it's been real.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Steve.
Oh no, thank you. Peace and respect.
Peace and respect to you. And guys, if you get the chance, go check out bigzebra.com, which is a very, very tongue-in-cheek for comedy expression of things actually happening and existing in the world, which I think is actually brilliant in that right. So everyone to come by, Moon Medi and Iron, you are very participative. I appreciate that. Ivan Van Veen and God the Good One and Holy Spackle, of course. Thank you all for dropping by. I want you all to know that I truly do look forward to the day that we're all great friends. And by that, I mean, you'll be in heaven. I'll be in heaven. And I think it's me totally rocking. Really, I do. Till next time, guys. Peace.